Alright, in this last video in this section, we are going to talk about using rational exponents to simplify expressions that are in radical form. So this is starting in radical form. We're going to use these rational exponents to simplify that, and then we want to make sure we go back to that radical notation at the end. Okay. So remember, when we have when we're going to rational exponents, the power is the numerator, the root is the denominator. So this is y, the power is 5, the root is 10. So 5/10 power. We need to simplify that. 5/10 can simplify down to 1/2. And then I want to make sure I write it back in radical notation. So 1/2 power is the same thing as a square root. And y to the first power, which is just y. Same idea in part B. But now I have that whole quantity in parentheses, so that 3x, that whole thing, is going to have a second power and a fourth root, which can be simplified. 2/4 again is 1/2. And then a 1/2 power is the same thing as a square root. So that whole thing simplifies down to the square root of 3x. Alright, I'm going to skip over this one for a minute and jump down to part D. Part D is the cube root of 2y, and then we take the fifth root of that. And we want to rewrite this using rational exponents. They tell us how to simplify it in the directions. Okay, so a lot of times we don't pick up on that key here, that terminology. Rational is going to be a fractional exponent. Okay, so that means take this radical, change it to a fractional exponent. So this whole quantity 2y is going to have a cube root, so we work inside out, the cube root of that. So as a rational exponent, that's 1/3 power. Okay, 3 goes in the denominator because it's the root. And then that whole thing is inside a fifth root, which is a 1/5 power. Right? Now I have a power to a power. When we have a power to a power, we multiply our exponents. So I still have that 2y, and multiplying 1/3 times 1/5, I get 1/15. And then I want to make sure I pay attention to my directions. I write my final answer in radical notation. So I'm going to go back to a radical. And now the root is 15. So it's going to be the 15th root of 2y. It's kind of a crazy root there. So the 15th root of 2y. Still not very great, but there you go. Alright, I want you to go ahead and try examples C and E. Take a moment to try those. Let's jump back to part C. So we have this quantity. We're taking the cube root of a squared, b cubed, and then all of that is getting the 12th power. So there's lots of things going on here, but the main thing is this 12 is the exponent, and it's a cube root. So I can rewrite this whole quantity here inside or underneath the radical with a rational exponent. So now I have that quantity a squared, b cubed, all of that has a 12th power and a cube root. The root goes in the denominator. Now 12/3 can be simplified. 12/3 is just 12 divided by 3, which is 4. So now I have a 4th power. I need to make sure everything in my parenthesis gets that 4th power. So a squared to the 4th power, it's a power to a power, we multiply. 2 times 4 is 8. Same thing with the b. 3 times 4 is 12. And that's as far as you can go. Part E is very similar to Part D, but now I'm starting with just x, and I have to go inside out, right? So x, the square root of x is the same thing as x to the 1/2 power, right? There was no exponent in there with the x, so it's x to the first power. So the power is 1, the root was 2. Take that whole thing to the 6th root, so the 1/6 power. Power to a power we multiply. 1/2 times 1/6. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 6 is 12. I have x to the 1/12 power. We want to write it in radical notation. So the 12th root of x to the first power, which is just x. You'll notice on part C, I didn't change anything back to radicals or anything like that because there wasn't one. Okay, it divided out. There was no radical here to write, so just leave this one alone. Otherwise, make sure you pay attention to the directions and write the final answer in the form that you're supposed to.